Hello, this is Mark Luke Carrier welcoming you once again to another episode of Fakes, Frauds, and Phonies. Now, is it possible to fool all the people all the time, or some of the people some of the time? Don't know, but Eric Hebborn gave it the old school try. In 1994, a headline read, "Mysterious Death of the King of the Forgers." That was in Rome's daily La Stampa. Eric Hebborn, in Rome to promote the Italian edition of his book, The Art Forger's Handbook, available from Woodstock Press, published in 1989, had been found savagely beaten on a dark street. Taken to a nearby hospital, he later died of head injuries. Investigators never identified the attackers. The crime remains unresolved to this day. It's perhaps a strange way to describe a master forger, but Hebborn was a true original. And although he gave the impression of being humble and self-effacing in public, he often boasted of his talent for copying and how he'd fooled all the experts, including curators of New York's Metropolitan Museum of Art and Ottawa's National Gallery in Canada. He claimed to have sold more than 1,000 fakes of old and modern masters, including artists from Bruegel to Picasso. Is any of it true? Is it possible for someone to fool all the experts? Probably not, but Eric Hebborn certainly came close, perhaps closer than anyone else ever has. Hebborn wrote two tell-all books, The Art Forger's Handbook and an autobiography entitled Drawn to Trouble, still available from Random House, I believe, published in 1993. The former, as the title implies, is a step-by-step guide to creating forgeries, filled with practical advice as well as with some spurious information, perhaps to mislead would-be forgers. But the true secret of Hebborn's success is contained in the autobiography. In it, he describes a set of golden rules he endeavored to follow throughout his career as a forger. They boil down to this: always transfer the responsibility of authenticity to the expert. That way, if a forgery should be investigated or lead to a trial, the forger has several outs he can take, from total innocence to mitigated guilt. And note that, as in the legitimate art world, Hebborn never coerced experts into a positive opinion, nor did he pay or render favors in exchange for a decree of authenticity. He thus left himself relatively well sheltered from the attacks or allegations of potential investigators or prosecuting attorneys. But who exactly was this clever fellow? Eric Hebborn was born within the sounds of the Bow Bells, as they say, in East London, qualifying him as a full-fledged Cockney. His mother, as he tells it, was nothing short of a sadist who showered him with blows morning, noon, and night. He reacted to this brutality by becoming a notorious delinquent, what fellow Cockneys call a tearaway. His antics became so serious that he himself admits that he probably deserved some of the beatings he received at home. His destructive acts of rebellion culminated with his setting fire to his school. I guess all schoolboys dream of doing that, but very few, fortunately, do it. The authorities took a predictably dim view of this stunt, and he was condemned to a stint as a Borstal boy in a British state reformatory. And here, in a no less violent environment than his home, he somehow blossomed as an artist. He had his first solo show at the Melton Art Club at age 15, and apparently sidetracked from a life of crime, Hebborn began accumulating several serious awards for his work, which eventually led to his acceptance at the Royal Academy of Art and a 1959 scholarship to study at the British Art School in Rome. His years of study behind him, Hebborn found work with George Axel, a well-known British restorer whose workshop was at the Dickensian London address of Haunch of Venison Yard. It was here that Hebborn added clever tricks and manipulation of unorthodox materials to his classical training and picked up the skills required to refresh older paintings without detection, a skill that would serve him well in his career as a forger. In his autobiography, he explains why Axel did a brisk trade with art dealers and galleries. Quote, should a painting be unsaleable because it represented an ugly woman, the ugly woman would become a young girl. If it represented a saleable young man contemplating an unsaleable skull, the offending skull was changed into a brimming glass of wine, or some other object with commercially viable associations. Close quotes. He also says, quote again, popular signatures came and unpopular signatures went. Close quotes. Soon enough, as if sticking to the straight and narrow was impossible for an East End Borstal boy, Hebborn began adding the forged signature of great painters to the works of minor artists, much to the joy of his clients, who unloaded the works on unsuspecting buyers for huge sums. In any case, far more than the original worth of the unrestored work. Unrestored here in quotes. Hebborn had taken the final step from hyper-restoration to outright forgery. The two men became partners in crime, Hebborn restoring paintings into existence in the style of old masters, and Axel marketing the works. The latter had no problem moving the goods, since to this point he had benefited from an excellent reputation in the British art world. Now, and thanks to Hebborn, what had been a quiet restoration workshop was now producing forgeries of Rubens, Poussin, Tiepolo, and Van Dyck. Astonishingly, two of the greatest British art experts of the time authenticated almost all the Hebborn forgeries. That was Sir John Pope, one-time director of the Victoria and Albert Museum and the British Museum, and Sir Anthony Blunt. The latter, a distant relative of the Queen, keeper of the royal family's pictures and drawings, as well as a friend of Hebborn's, was later stripped of his knighthood when he was revealed to be a Soviet spy. The infamous fourth man in the Cambridge spy ring that included Kim Philby, Guy Burgess, and Donald MacLean. Can't make this stuff up. Hebborn had met Blunt during his student days in Rome, and it was a friendship that was to last a lifetime. They were both gay, but Hebborn claims that their relationship was never physical, explaining that the closest they ever came to sex culminated in both passing out from an overdose of vino rosso. In any event, once Hebborn had settled permanently in Rome, creating forgeries under the name of Galleria Panini, Blunt was a frequent house guest, a favor the latter gladly returned when Hebborn visited London to sell his fakes at Sotheby's, Christie's, and Colnaghi. It's long been a source of controversy that a man in Sir Anthony Blunt's position, curator of the Queen's collection of drawings and director of London's prestigious Courtauld Institute of Art, should be so friendly with a notorious forger. It's even more disturbing that Blunt authenticated several of Hebborn's forgeries. There are varying opinions on this behavior. Some say Blunt was in collusion with Hebborn because, despite the prestige of his various positions, his revenue remained humble. Others claim he took pleasure in watching Hebborn fool the art world, while still others affirm that Blunt did not have the eye and that he was easily bamboozled, especially by a close friend. The fact that Blunt was indeed embroiled in controversies surrounding misattributed Poussins bolsters the credibility of this last theory. Whatever his reasons for giving his illustrious blessing to Hebborn's forgeries, they're a secret he took to the grave when he died in 1983, disgraced and shunned because of his exposure as a Soviet spy. Meanwhile, the London art world was abuzz with talk of these works, which Hebborn was importing from Italy on a regular basis. The most prestigious firms couldn't wait to get hold of any product he could send their way. Were they all complicit in the sale of known forgeries, or were they genuinely being duped, as they claimed? No one will ever know. But it may have been a case of the nudge-nudge, wink-wink phenomena, a sort of willful blindness attitude taken by some surprisingly important galleries, dealers, and auctioneers. A situation where everyone knows they're dealing with forgeries, with the notable exception of the end buyer, and yet all the intermediaries make believe it's not really happening, hiding behind what politicians call plausible deniability. If the duplicity is exposed, all the parties involved act like offended virgins, swearing they simply had no idea that the works were forgeries. Then, To avoid messy court proceedings, they happily refund a few clients and make a public relations statement that, in future, they will redouble their vigilance to keep this sort of thing from happening again. And, of course, they offer authorities unlimited cooperation in catching the nasty scoundrels who give the art business a bad name. And that's usually where it ends. Meanwhile, however, if no one is caught in flagrante, they'll continue merrily along their way, selling counterfeit art and making bundles of very real money. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. When the Hebborn scandal broke, it sent shockwaves through the British art world. Fear of forgery struck the business like a nasty strain of the flu. Everyone began looking askance at every work that was put before them, and the art market ground to a halt. Hebborn added to the controversy by publishing Drawn to Trouble and, during speaking engagements, claiming to have deceived just about every art expert in the world, insinuating that there was not a major museum on earth that did not have at least one of his pieces on its walls. Far from being repentant, Hebborn announced to the world that he would not let minor contretemps keep him from creating even more forgeries, and he vowed to flood the market with 500 bogus works. There's no reason to believe that he didn't keep his promise. One thing is certainly true and verifiable, and that is that Hebborn was fastidious in his execution of excellent forgeries. He fabricated his own ink from period ingredients, much as Van Meegeren had ground his own pigments. He meticulously fatigued the paper to replicate aging, carefully adding abrasions to the surface. He even claimed to drink alcohol while he worked to relax his hand, the better to imitate the fluidity of the lines. Well, maybe, or just maybe he liked to drink. And in a particular clever move, he always adapted the choice of artists to the paper he had in stock, having harvested genuinely old sheets from ancient books and manuscripts. A particular favorite of forgers are the blank pages at the beginning or end of old volumes, purchased from antique booksellers or stolen from the stacks of public libraries. Carefully removed with a razor blade, they make great platforms for forged letters or drawings, particularly of the 19th century. The only drawback to this technique is the limited dimensions of the paper, often a dead giveaway of a fake. Furthermore, like most clever forgers, Hebborn adapted his output to the demands of the marketplace. Old master drawings from the 14th and 15th centuries are extremely rare and thus highly praised. And Hebborn's forgeries from this period are praised for their quality. And purchasers' keen need to own the works blinded them to whatever weaknesses may have been present. Museum curators and art experts are mere mortals, and human beings are not infallible. Consider, for example, the Turner Getty controversy, pitting an irascible keen art expert against the richest independent art institution in the world, a story spiced by enough crusty twists and turns for a soap opera. In 1994, British art expert Nicholas Turner had no way of knowing what sort of mad maelstrom would ensue when the John Paul Getty Museum hired him as curator of drawings. The Getty has an endowment of approximately $5 billion, and according to the stipulations of J. Paul Getty, it must spend 4% of that endowment, about $200 million per year, on new acquisitions for its collection. Practically nothing is beyond the museum's acquisitive reach. What the Getty wants, the Getty gets. And in 1994, the Getty wanted Nicholas Turner, a recognized international authority on drawings. He was thrilled to accept the offer and moved to sunny Southern California. This was a dream job. Curator of drawings for the Getty brought unparalleled professional prestige and, perhaps more importantly, an unlimited research budget, which is what the museum had offered to sweeten the deal. After taking up the much-coveted post and surveying the drawings in his care, he began suspecting that some of them were fake. Clever forgeries by no less a master than Eric Hebborn. He enumerated 6 suspicious works in all, for which the Getty had paid a total of $1 million between 1988 and 1992. But how was Turner able to identify them with such certainty? Well, first, Turner was no stranger to the world of fakes, having been among the curators of a popular British museum show in 1990 called Fake, The Art of Deception. He had consequently studied enough of Hebborn's known pieces to recognize the artist's style. Most fine artists take pride in a personal, identifiable style, but that's the last thing a forger wants. In fact, a personal style is the number one enemy of forgers, the weakness that often proves to be their downfall. Anyone who copies art must be an artist in his or her own right, with a minimum of innate skill, even if it's limited to mimicry. A forger, by definition, puts this ability to work carefully, copying rather than spontaneously creating. Also, most artists work from live models. That was especially true during the Renaissance, while most forgers copy from an image on a flat plane. And most of all, an artist or a forger, no matter what methodology he or she uses, inevitably develops some sort of style, a true curse for the forger who works hard at quashing any glimmer of self-expression. Consequently, the riskiest thing for a forger is to have several works under observation at the same place at the same time. An astute observer, a curator perhaps, might note common characteristics surfacing in forgeries attributed to several artists whose works allegedly range from the Renaissance to modern times. These similarities betray the forger's hand. In Drawn to Trouble, Hebborn goes to great lengths, attempting to discredit the recognizability of any given forger's style. It might happen sometimes, he reluctantly admits, but never to him. To demonstrate how clever he is, Hebborn invites the reader to examine 2 of his forgeries illustrated in the book, each from a different artist and a vastly different era. Notice any similarities, he asks, and answers the question for us. No, of course not. See how good I am? Events show that Hebborn was, not good enough for Turner. Even a master like Hebborn was not secure from the tyranny of style, his cockiness notwithstanding. Here's an interesting exercise that illustrates the quasi-inescapable phenomenon. Handwriting expert explained, if you had the opportunity to save samples of your signature over the years, say from your teen years to late middle age, you'd undoubtedly observe huge differences in how you sign your name. But there remains enough similarity to make them all uniquely yours. The same thing occurs when someone tries to forge a signature. The writer's unique style shows through the deception. Turner examined all 6 drawings, 4 of them alleged to be by 4 different artists, and recognized the hand of Hebborn. He blew the whistle, at least internally, to the Getty administration, and things went downhill from there. But the animosity greeting the revelation might have had more to do with the messenger than the message. Polite members of the Getty staff delicately referred to Turner as difficult, while less subtle colleagues describe him as an unpleasant old curmudgeon with a disagreeable know-it-all attitude. And by declaring the 6 drawings fake, he was casting aspersions on his well-liked predecessor's skill and integrity, which further alienated him from the Getty people. To add a bit of pepper to this already heady mixture, Turner, a married man, openly had an affair with his curatorial assistant. It lasted a tumultuous 6 months, after which Turner terminated the relationship. The lady did not take kindly to this rejection and promptly filed a formal complaint of sexual harassment against her ex-lover. Rightly or wrongly, the Getty decided not to follow up on the complaint. Turner, not to be outdone, immediately filed a suit against her, claiming she was harassing him by opening his mail, erasing his computer files, and making late-night calls to his home. Nothing coming of this complaint either. Not an auspicious start to Turner's new career at the Getty. Arguments, rancor, affairs, and ugly breakups, accusations, recriminations. The dream job was turning into a nightmare. And as far as the 6 allegedly fake drawings were concerned, the message to Turner from the Getty was clear. Keep your mouth shut. Soon enough, lawsuits flew back and forth while Turner moved closer and closer to the museum's exit. In a final blow to his pride and his professional integrity, the museum's administration stripped him of practically any responsibility and forbade access to the collection of drawings, a rather odd predicament for a curator of drawings. It was obvious they wanted him to take the initiative of making the final move out the door. And he did finally leave, returning to Britain to settle in a small town where he pursued a career as an independent consultant. The messy controversy ends with a clear and disturbing message to art scholars. When confronted with outright fakes or suspicious works, put the whistle away. Saying anything could cost you your job, your reputation, and every dollar in your savings account as you spend a fortune in defense against lawsuits. So how can we know if Hebborn was telling the truth when he boasted of fooling all the art experts? If future discoveries of fakes in a museum's collection remain a well-kept secret, there's no way of verifying such a claim. And here's one more question no one can answer. How many more whistleblowers are museum administrators effectively silencing with fear? When the public enters a museum, it has a reasonable expectation as to the authenticity of its contents. If there's doubt, a work's label should indicate as much. Controversy still surrounds the Greek statue of a nude male youth known as a kouros, purchased by the Getty in 1983. Dating to the 6th century BCE, there are only about 200 kouroi in existence throughout the world, and most of those are highly damaged or in fragments. The one offered to the Getty was 7 feet tall and in a perfect state of preservation, an astonishing find if it was authentic. The asking price? Almost $10 million. It took the Getty more than a year of careful consideration before deciding to purchase the statue. The work was subjected to a battery of investigations, notably a sampling of marble taken by a consulting geologist. The statue was sculpted in Tassos dolomite, consistent with other extant kouroi. More significantly, a layer of calcite covered it from head to foot, a chemical transformation of dolomite that occurs only after a very long period of aging. The statue, Getty's experts decided, was indeed ancient. The problem began after the work was bought and paid for. The first to voice doubts was the late Federico Zeri, an illustrious Italian art historian, Nobel laureate, and member of the Getty board, who said the work did not feel right. He was followed by New York University's Evelyn Harrison, a renowned expert on Greek sculpture, who also felt something was amiss. Finally, when Thomas Hoving, former director of New York's Museum of Modern Art, viewed the kouros, the word fresh popped into his mind. Freshness, of course, is not the primary characteristic of a 2,000-year-old work. Something, in his opinion, was very wrong. The Getty decided to ship the statue to Greece and have a group of scholars assess its authenticity. Concurrently, the provenance, which had initially appeared solid and convincing, was unraveling. The Getty's investigation revealed that most of the supporting documentation was bogus. As if that was not enough, the initial scientific findings came under serious scrutiny. It appears that a clever forger using potato mold can easily reproduce the dolomite's calcite layer in a relatively short period of time, destroying a strong scientific element in determining the statue's authenticity. The disastrous verdict then came from Greece. The scholars the cream of universities and museums, were unanimous. The statue was a fake. The Getty, unwilling to fully admit to a $10 million mistake, catalogs the work with the following caption, quote, about 530 BC, or modern forgery. Well, that's it for this episode of Fakes, Frauds, and Phonies. Please subscribe, and if you're a victim of art fraud, please write to me. My email is fakesandfrauds, all in one word, at writeme, WRITEME.com. In closing, please note that a illustrated print version of Fakes, Frauds, and Phonies is available at Amazon worldwide in Kindle or paperback format. So this is your host, Mark Luke Carrier, saying bye-bye for now.